Describe it, Jane. It seemed, sir, a woman, tall and large, with thick and dark hair hanging long down her back. I know not what dress she had on. It was white and straight, but whether gown, sheet, or shroud, I cannot tell. Did you see her face? Not at first, but presently she took my veil from its place. She held it up, gazed at it long, and then she threw it over her own head and turned to the mirror. At that moment, I saw the reflection of the visage and features quite distinctly in the dark oblong glass. And how were they? Fearful and ghastly to me. Oh, sir, I never saw a face like it. It was a discolored face. It was a savage face. I wish I could forget the roll of the red eyes and the fearful blackened inflation of the lineaments. Ghosts are usually pale, Jane. This, sir, was purple. The lips were swelled and dark, the brow furrowed, the black eyebrows widely raised over the bloodshot eyes. Shall I tell you of what it reminded me? You may. Of the foul German spectre, the vampire. Oh, what did it do? Sir, it removed my veil from its gaunt head, rent it in two parts, and flinging both on the floor, trampled on them. Afterwards, it drew aside the window curtain and looked out. Perhaps it saw the dawn approaching, for taking the candle, it retreated to the door. Just at my bedside, the figure stopped. The fiery eyes glared upon me. She thrust up her candle close to my face and extinguished it under my eyes. I was aware her lurid visage flamed over mine, and I lost consciousness. For the second time in my life, only the second time, I became insensible from terror. Who was with you when you revived? No one, sir, but the broad day. I rose, bathed my head and face in water, drank a long draught, felt that though enfeebled, I was not ill, and determined that to none but you would I impart this vision. Now, sir, tell me who and what that woman was. That is from Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and this is your Sunday Penguin for today. So welcome, my friends, to stately Vaughan Manor. Yes, and today we've got your Sunday Penguin, which for a change I'm actually filming on Sunday, so this is going to go up a little late. So yeah, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Now I have to admit, Jane Eyre is my favorite Bronte book. Now I know her sister's book, Wuthering Heights, was the better book. I know. That was a titanic masterpiece. It was a masterpiece. I have to admit, I like this book better. I like Jane Eyre an awful lot. So Charlotte Bronte, Charlotte was born April 21st, 1816, but she died much too young on March 31st, 1855. Unfortunately, we lost all the Bronte sisters far too young. So this was originally published as Jane Eyre, an autobiography. It was published as Currer Bell on October 16th, 1947, Currer Bell being the pen name that she published the book under. So Jane Eyre, great character, really strong, really independent, really, really smart. She was a sharp one, Jane Eyre. And she is truly the hero of her own story. Yeah, I like this one a lot, and I like Jane Eyre an awful lot. She was revolutionary in her time, and she's still kind of revolutionary today. So Jane was a poor orphan. This being the Victorian era, of course, she was a poor orphan. And she spent her childhood at Gateshead Hall, and she was raised or looked after by her horrible aunt and her terrible cousins. Her aunt was just wretched. She was terrible. She was so bad that you were actually happy when Jane left and went to boarding school. So yeah, after spending a wretched childhood with her terrible aunts, with her terrible aunt and wretched cousins, Jane goes to boarding school, and it is the worst boarding school ever. It was what was this place called? It was called Lowood. It was the Lowood School, and it was a boarding school for orphaned or poor girls. And poor Jane, she was both orphaned and poor. And she spends just a wretched, awful time at this place. And where she has she does make friends, but then tragedy happens because there's lots of tragedy going on in this book. And she gives a lot of detail about this time at the boarding school, so that it seems really real and the whole thing is really engaging. It was a good section of the book, I have to say. I found it really interesting. But then the real story starts. The real story starts when she becomes a governess at Thornfield Hall. She becomes a governess to a young girl, Adele. And at the hall, at Thornfield Hall, why, that place sounds almost as majestic as Vaughan Manor, but not quite. And there she meets Edward Fairfax Rochester, the mysterious Edward Rochester. So Edward, he comes off as all snooty and aloof at the beginning. Now, here's one thing that you should know about Jane from Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre describes herself as a literal plain Jane. She is small and plain, according to Jane Eyre. Now, this is the one part that you could be pretty sure Jane Eyre is an unreliable narrator. You get the feeling that Jane is actually really smoking hot because old Rochester falls for her quick. In fact, that's not the only time that happens. The guys, they really dig Jane Eyre. No matter what she says, trust me, she's smoking. So poor Edward Rochester, he just falls for her because not only she's smoking hot, and I'm telling you, she was. She's also super smart and incredibly capable. Neither of which you can accuse old Rochester of being. Like, there's a fire that breaks out and she rescues him. You know, I mean, she is literally the hero of this story. And Edward Rochester is, I guess he's kind of the heroine. Edward Rochester, he comes off as aloof, but he's kind of a mess, this guy. And he has a secret. A deep, dark, mysterious secret. Now, you probably know what this secret is, even if you've never read this book. But I'm assuming a lot of people have heard about this book. This book is very, very famous for a reason. It's awful good. But I'm assuming you probably know the secret. But me, I didn't know the secret when I first read this book. You know, when I was younger, growing up and reading books, I was far too manly to read a book by Charlotte Bronte. But, you know, then I got a little older and stopped being such an ass, and I read this book. But I didn't know much about it. And so I didn't know the secret. So I was actually surprised by the secret that old Rochester keeps. But before the secret is revealed, they fall for each other. He falls for her, and for some reason, she falls for him. Now, he's got money, this guy, but he doesn't seem like much of a prize to me, old Rochester. But Jane, she saw something in Edward. But she did. She saw something in Edward. She could have done better, I think. But she did fall for old Rochester. and they plan to get married. But then the secret is revealed. And man, this secret's a doozy. Trust me. And lots of drama unfolds. And Jane must leave. And more drama unfolds. And I can't tell you too much more of what happens. Do they find their way back to each other? Does true love win in the end? Maybe. But this story was great. Really engaging the whole way through. I loved it. I have to admit. I mean, this book, it's kind of long. How long is this? It's like 550, 600 pages almost. But it's not that long. But it's great. It's great the whole way through. Really engaging. It flies by. It's a great read. One of those classics you probably have to read. It's an important book, and it's really, really entertaining. I mean, I don't know anybody who's read this and hasn't liked it. I guess there must be somebody out there, but I don't know who they might be. Because this book is great. Melodramatic to be sure. But it all works. Just a great story. We like Jane an awful lot. I think all of us can kind of relate to Jane, or at least we want to relate to Jane because she's so darn capable throughout the whole thing. Despite being poor, despite being an orphan, none of that could stop Jane. She doesn't sit there and feel sorry for herself. No! She takes charge of wherever she's at and whatever she does. Which is why Edward finds himself so dependent on her. Literally, he depends on her for a lot. And, you know, he just falls apart without her, poor Rochester. So yeah, excellent book, your Sunday Penguin for today. I could not recommend this book higher. It's fantastic. So do yourself a favor if you haven't read this book. For goodness sake, read this book. So yeah, that's your Sunday Penguin. Catch me tomorrow for Mythos Monday when we'll be talking about a very different story by H.P. Lovecraft, the Haunter of the Dark. So yeah, thanks for joining me, folks. I'll see you next time here at Stately Vaughan Manor. Bye, guys.